Ben.
Okay. Do you want to call the case, Mr. Russell?
Yes, Your Honor, that's Mr. West, and that's case number 16CR11104. That's what this she's got it. All right. And I believe
101200, and that's Leeerskin.
Thank you, Mr. Erskine. And this is Mr. Fisher for the defendant.
Good morning, Your Honor. Graham Fisher, FISHER, bar number 063253, and I'm here with my client, Robert West.
Mr. West, good morning.
And Your Honor, to give you some background, Mr. West was arraigned on an information day before yesterday on a new case, and case number 16CR18461, and that is the reason, or one of the reasons why I'm requesting this release condition at this time. There was a mix-up in my office, and the conditions that I had requested to be requested at arraignment were not in front of that arraignment judge. To give you some background on that case, Mr. West, my understanding, is a self-proclaimed journalist and cop watcher, and so he provides checks and balances to the police at police action. He will go out to police scenes and film those and then post them on YouTube. In this particular case, there was a active shooter call out, and an individual armed with a assault rifle was reported shooting, shots fired. Crisis negotiation and the CERT team, Portland's PPB's SWAT team, went out to contain the situation. The shooter was in a townhome, and behind the townhome was a chain link fence, and then a perimeter of police tape was placed around the front of the chain link fence, so closing off an entire perimeter. CERT went in and cleared that area in order to safely make contact with the shooter. And Mr. West, my understanding is that Mr. West was there videotaping from a safe location outside of the police tape. And then as CERT officers were entering the area armed with long guns, they noticed that there was an individual inside of the perimeter hiding behind a bush, and essentially, I guess I'm a visual person, so CERT is going in, suspect that they're trying to get in touch or make contact with, is probably 15 feet, or his home is 15 feet away. Mr. West was located in their CERT's backdrop. So if CERT needed to fire, Mr. West was at risk of getting shot. In addition to his presence there, CERT, obviously, shooting is not the first option of officers. And so one of the other options is less lethal force, such as a dog, canine unit. But when there are individuals inside the perimeter, a dog will not, so for example, if they needed to release the dog on the shooter, because Mr. West was in that area, he could have been, he could have thrown the dog off so it went to him instead of the shooter, and also puts himself at danger of getting attacked by the dog. And so I'm requesting that this condition be placed on him, and I'm requesting that Mr. West be maintained at least 150 feet away from any police officer involved in any official police action or active police investigation that the defendant is not a part of. That includes, but is not limited to, police contact with third parties, service of search warrants and arrest warrants, traffic stops. This my request, I by no means want to, I guess, trample Mr. West's, free speech rights. But after the incident with the active shooter, it is clear to me that he is putting himself at grave danger, as well as the police officers, and also the individuals that the police are contacting. In this specific case, the whole unit where the active shooter was evacuated, and so there were also people around the police tape, and I believe that his actions also put those individuals at risk. The reports indicate that Mr. West, Mr. West is on, he has 4 open cases. One of them, in addition to the case that I just explained, was another case where he is videotaping police cleaning up, doing a cleanup by the steel bridge, and he is in the middle of NATO Parkway. So again, he's putting himself at risk. But in his interactions with police, there have been conversations with him saying, you need to respect the safety of our officers, the perimeters, the rules. And he has reported that he doesn't care. He's going to continue to do what he does regardless. And so that's why I'm making this request.
Good morning, Your Honor. So my first objection, we do object to the state's proposed modification of the release conditions. My first objection is a procedural one, where this is the time and place set for trial readiness on a case that's completely unrelated to the allegations that counsel was discussing. The allegations that counsel was discussing occurred on March 30th. I was in contact with Ms. Erskine late yesterday afternoon. She emailed me the police reports yesterday evening and let me know that the state was intended to raise an oral motion to modify the release conditions to prevent Mr. West from recording police if he's within 150 feet. So obviously doing any kind of meaningful recordation of police activities. And it's our position that this would be an appropriate motion to be heard by the criminal procedure CPC judge, and I think they should put this motion in writing. Ms. Erskine's proposed release modification, when she read it, although I had a general idea about what the state was proposing, I heard it for the first time about the particulars of the kinds of interactions that they would want, and the reason I'm asking that is that it's important. This is what Mr. West does for a living. He records the police as an act of free speech and as his civic duty. We have his civil attorney is here to talk about, if the court does want to address the merits, Greg Lockwood, about the type of injury that this type of proposed modification would lead to. But I would request that the court not take up the merits, but instead, pursuant to my interpretation of the local rules, is that this type of release modification motion is properly heard.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off, and I didn't realize this was going to take quite so long, or I wouldn't have kept everybody waiting on this, but since we're taking it up, let's deal with it.
Okay.
So, what is the rule on release modifications?
Well, I think it would just be a normal, because this is a motion by the state. It's a motion by the state to keep Mr. West 150 feet away from police
So
if he's going to record them.
what's the rule that says it has to be in writing and it has to be set on a different docket?
Well, I don't think there's a rule that it has to be in writing, but this isn't enough notice for us to meaningfully respond to, and we'd like the chance to
Meaningfully respond.
to this.
Okay. Here's the trouble that I'm having with this. I do think there might be some prejudice in the fact that there's not an ability to respond, but the nature of the allegations gives me very, very serious concerns. So I guess I feel like I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. Because if I don't do anything, Mr. West, if these allegations are true, could go out and get himself killed or get an officer injured or killed. And if I take it up right now, he might be prejudiced and his free speech and ability to be a lay journalist might be harmed because he's 150 feet away from anything and he can't cover it. And so it's a very difficult decision. What I'm going to do, and I don't need to hear from civil counsel. This is a further a trial readiness docket. It does seem a bit odd to have it here, but I understand the state's concern. I understand why they brought it here, and they brought it quick. Because if something happens tonight or tomorrow, it could be too late. So here's my ruling. And if you think it's procedurally wrong or whatever, I guess you can decide what to do about that. My ruling is this, Mr. West, as a condition of your release, you are to obey the police officers with respect to staying out of the way of active operations. You are to stay behind any perimeter that they have set. And if they tell you you're in the wrong place for their activity, you need to listen to them and get out of the way, even if it interferes with your filming. And that's my order.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, it's,
And I'm not ruling 150 feet away. And if the state feels they want to modify that and put that 150 feet away, which I understand you want to do, and I don't blame you, but you're going to have to do it at a different proceeding and give them time and do it in a written motion.
understood, Your Honor.